Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Radio Days with Gary Music Miller. I'm Dave Black. I am your co-host, along with the West Virginia Broadcasting Hall of Famer, Gary Music Miller here. We are coming to you from the West Virginia Museum of Radio and Technology. It is at 1640 Florence Avenue in Huntington. Their website is www.mt, excuse me, I knew I'd get that wrong, mrtwv.org, mrtwv.org. We encourage you to stop by. We encourage you to come out and take a look and walk through the museum. It is a wonderful, wonderful facility. They have we were just talking a while ago about the microphones they have on display here, the ones we liked and things of that nature. And they just, every time we're here, we can't help but walk around and take a look at something else. Kind of like the Smithsonian of radio equipment. So sure. It's a wonderful thing. So we encourage you to visit their website. We encourage you to stop by and take a look. And besides that, the West Virginia Broadcasting Hall of Fame has a section here all for the people who have been inducted. You'll get to see this gentleman's lovely mug on the wall. You'll get to see everybody else who's been inducted through the years. And you may know some of these people. You may remember their names from years gone past, whether they're television, radio, entertainers, or whatever they are. So get a chance, stop by and take a look at them. Also, we ask you to like, share, and subscribe, and ring the little bell so you'll be notified of the newest content that's been uploaded. And that way you can keep track of all our shenanigans and things that go on here that we do on a semi-regular basis, so to speak, weather permitting. And we're not the type that takes any chances anymore, getting out in the weather and driving around in the snow like nuts, right. Like I used to. When you treat your body like an amusement park for many years, you just kind of stop that after a while. Yeah. So with that said, we're going to talk about some things today that the average person does not get a chance to do, and that is meet and greet celebrities from show business in general, mostly in Gary's case, mostly the music business, and some other entertainers to that fact. So, Gary, if you want to lead off and let us go. And by the way,
thank you very much, Dave.
By the way, before we get going, I want everyone out there to know that's watching this man was the inspiration for the song Hunka Hunka Burnin' Love. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much for saying that. Not too many people realize that. No. We're actually doing this show in response to a letter we received at rdwgmm@gmail.com, Radio Days with Gary Music Miller, abbreviated. The letter came from Sean McDowell. You may remember him from Channel 13. He did sports here. He's doing reporting out in Kansas City now. And Sean has hooked up with us, reconnected with us, if you will, his town of Huntington and me and the folks at Key. And he's enjoying the series, and he wrote and asked who I'd met. And I need to explain, I guess, that I was music director at WKEE from 1978 to 2009, the entire 31-year period that I was there. It was partially my responsibility to get records on the air and get them heard by the programming department, the program director. And of course, if records got on the air, they sold. If they didn't get on the air, they didn't sell too well. Unlike maybe today, where you can put them on YouTube and iTunes and all kinds of different things. Back in the late 70s, early to mid 80s, which is pretty much the area we're going to cover, you had to be on the radio, and that was the only way people got new music. And if they got on the radio, they would sell. So the record companies wanted to make sure, as the record programmer, that I saw their acts when they came to town. And in the late 70s, early mid 80s, it was unbelievable around here. I think the Civic Center opened in 77, didn't it? Yeah. When Elvis was supposed to have opened. And just a couple of weeks before the Huntington Civic Center opened, and then Charleston Civic Center. And 4 or 5 times a year, each venue, Huntington and Charleston, would have major acts of the day in. And it was to the record company's advantage that I get invited to the show, get concert tickets to the show, and get to go backstage and meet them when that was an option. So that's how I got to meet some of these people.
Now, let me say something. In '77, when you were still at AMX, I think it was?
Yes.
You were at AMX or CMI? Which one?
I was at WAMX.
AMX.
Yeah.
Okay, they were rock and roll, right?
Yeah, it was top 40.
Top 40. Okay.
Yeah, it was top 40.
Did you have backstage pass for Elvis?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know whether I would have gotten one or not. I didn't know. It ended up being the Hart and the Sanford Townsend Band. Hart and Sanford Townsend Band opened in place of Elvis. They got them kind of at the last minute, and I did get to go backstage and meet both groups, but probably only because I was with a guy named Randy Berry, who was in radio, and his father was the head of security at the Huntington Civic Center, so we got to go backstage for that show.
Hey, Randy, if you take a look at this, hi, how you doing?
Randy won't be doing that. He passed away a couple of years
ago.
For God's sake. I'm sorry to tell you that. I'm sorry.
Don't I look like an idiot?
Yeah, well, it's like when I said hi to Meadowlark Lemon on Twitter a couple of years ago, and you wrote me and said, Meadowlark's passed away.
Well, I did not know that, and I am very sorry.
Yeah, he passed away. I'm not sure what the story was. Randy was a great broadcaster. If you remember Bobby Rich, you remember Randy. But in answer to Sean's letter, and we've been asking for input from you, and Sean asked me, who were the artists you met? He's seen me post pictures on Twitter with Greg Kinn, Hall & Oates. There's a picture of me floating around with Styx that I didn't even know existed. If you check into my Twitter page right now, at garymusicmiller, you'll see me with Rick Springfield on the header. So these are some of the folks I got to meet, and he said, who have you met, and what kind of interaction did you have with these people? Were they good stories, bad stories? Some of you had a mixture of both, probably. So I gave Dave a list of the people that I'd met. It ended up being humongous, and asked him to pare it down to some of the people that we, were probably interested in, the super group. So
yeah, I have seen the picture of you with Tommy Shaw and all those, hanging around there. And Tommy Shaw, every picture I've seen of Tommy Shaw, he's always looking the other direction.
Is that a fact? Well,
it's something strange. He's always this way or that way, never looking straight ahead.
Well, Tommy was with Styx. I don't recall a lot about that show. From my memory, if it serves me correctly, they were supposed to go on at 8 o'clock, and their plane was delayed, and they didn't actually get on stage till around 11, and did a 2-hour show, and then we went backstage and met them, apparently. I don't really remember that, but I was probably asleep by then or something. But a picture surfaced from the folks in Beckley, who were in Top 40 radio at the time, and there's a picture of me with Tommy Shaw. So I don't have a lot of memories about that show, but it was a great concert. I do remember that, and we did wait around. We waited the whole time, and I was glad I didn't have to get up the next morning. Yeah.
Well, let's slip over to non-musical. Although he did play the banjo pretty good. What about Steve Martin? Was there anything special there?
Yeah, I met Steve Martin. King Tut was his one and only hit, I guess. And the record company, I was with a news person from the radio station, and she had, I think, basically set up an interview with Steve. We got to go backstage, took a picture with him. He was very quiet, very stoic. I posted the picture of he and I together on Twitter, and I'm smiling and there, and he's just, almost looks like a cutout of himself. So he didn't, he wasn't, real good with mixing with people. I don't guess it's kind of the way I am when I'm off the air. I'm extremely shy, and he struck me as being shy. But that same news person, so I met Steve. That same news person set up an interview with Cheech and Chong. They were in Huntington in February, I believe, of '79, and she wanted to go over, and she asked me if I'd like to go along, and I did. I went along, went to their hotel room, but she conducted the interview, and I wasn't even really supposed to be there. So I don't really have any memories of them, but I did remember when we talked about Steve Martin, I remember, hey, I met Cheech and Chong too.
You
And I looked them up on the internet and found out they were here in February.
probably couldn't see him for the smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
Okay, so Steve Martin was not exactly the most personable in the world.
yes, he was. There's a couple of people like that.
Yeah.
Basically, you get a picture made with him and you leave. He was one of those guys.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to put you in any kind of jeopardy here, but
Yeah.
what about Greg Kihn?
Yeah, we had played a couple of songs by Greg, the breakup song and Jeopardy. And as I recall, Greg Kihn came in as a lead act for somebody, probably Hall & Oates, I'm thinking maybe, or Rick Springfield. But he was a lead act, great guy. Went over to his hotel room that afternoon, picked him up, brought him to the radio station, and we did an interview. And then after the show, he invited us to come down to join him in the bar at the Radisson downtown. And there's a picture of me floating around with Greg. Greg has a glass. I've got a glass. And I sent the picture to him and wrote him and said on Twitter and said, I wonder who bought this round. And he never responded to that. So he's probably like, don't post pictures of me. But he was a very nice guy. Greg Kihn was a super guy. And he was in Huntington.
Well, okay. With that said, let's move along. Now, one of the big '80s bands out of Australia,
Air Supply.
Air Supply, absolutely. Yeah. Now, what kind of interaction happened with those guys?
Well, I've got an interesting couple of stories about Air Supply. We played Lost in Love. I felt I was a sucker for ballads and love songs. I mean, those were just my forte. When I heard a great ballad, heard a great love song, wanted to get it on the air. And we were fairly early playing Lost in Love before that was their first single, Air Supply's first single, and before it got national attention. And we started it up the chart. And I heard from Arista Records, a very dear friend of mine named Pete Spazoff. And Pete called me from Arista and he said, Gary, you've been a great supporter of Lost in Love. Would you do me a favor, take the album home and listen to it and tell me what the next single should be? So I did. I took it home, listened to the next, probably a couple of times, all the way through. Came back to the station the next day, called Pete and said, Pete, the next single, without a doubt, should be a song called All Out of Love. And he said, okay, I'll take that under advisement and talk to my people about it. And it was only a few days later when he called me back, he said, you can start playing All Out of Love whenever you want to. That's going to be the next single. And of course, he wanted me to play the next single so that interest in the band would continue. And which is never a guarantee. When you have a first single out, you're never sure if you're going to have a second or not. So we did we played Lost in Love like 4 times a day. 3 times I would play Lost in Love, and then one time a day I would substitute it with the next single, All Out of Love. And then when All Out of Love became a hit, we played it. And we actually got our very first gold record, thanks to Air Supply and Arista Records. Steve Hayes was the program director at the time. I was the music director, and we accepted the gold record and were champion of theirs. You know, we fought for them and did very well with them, and we got a gold record award when they sold over 1 million copies. And that was actually televised. One of the TV stations came over and covered us accepting the award from Arista. Now, you go forward about a year, and Air Supply came to Huntington. And Pete, wanted to make sure we were taken care of because we'd been instrumental in playing their music and selling 1 million copies and whatnot. And he said, we'll set up an interview with a radio station. You come over and pick us up. So I got a nice, I think, Lincoln Town car from somebody, went over, pulled into the Radisson, and Pete walks out. Pete says, there's been a change of plans. This is for those of you that think it would be extremely glamorous to mix it up with your favorite stars. Pete says that there's been a change of plans. I've called the program director, I've called the station, they know the change. We're going to take Air Supply to the doctor. The 2 guys in Air Supply were Russell Hitchcock and Graham Russell. And Russell had had a back problem, and they made a doctor's appointment. He said, so instead of taking us to the station for the interview, you're going to take us to the doctor. So I said, okay. So they told me where the doctor was. We got to the doctor. I don't remember a lot of conversation with them, but got to the doctor, parked the car, got ready to get out, as you would when you get to a doctor's appointment. And Pete reaches over and grabs me on the arm, and he says, Gary, you really need to stay outside here in the car. And I said, oh, yeah? And he said, yeah. He said, I'm going to go in with them, take care of the bill, make sure that everything's taken care of, but it would really be cooler if you stayed out here in the car. So I said, okay. So it was an extremely hot day. It was about an hour and a half. And I felt kind of small at that point. You know, I went from getting a gold record, helping them out, to not being able to go into the doctor's office with them. And I've never really questioned why that was. I'm assuming it's because they were private people and they didn't want a lot of people around when they went to the doctor. But I'm not disparaging them at all. My wife was in the hospital, and I told them that, and they autographed a picture. Sorry you're going to miss the concert. Hope you feel better. Best wishes. And autographed a picture to her. So they were nice guys. I just felt kind of small. You know, I was relegated to the role of the chauffeur, if you will. And
Early days of HIPAA.
Yeah. So, but that's my air supply story.
No,
not a good nor bad.
I have an air supply story.
Uh-huh.
Back years ago, I don't know, some of you may remember this and some of you may not, but if you do, good. If you don't, here it is. Years ago, there used to have a thing, so to speak, some concerts over at the Harris Riverfront Park as Summerfest. You remember that?
That's right.
And Air Supply was the headliner one night. It had been threatening terrible thunderstorms, lightning, wind, hail. I mean, you name it, it was going to come, supposedly. Well, it was time for them to go on the stage. It was sprinkling rain. It wasn't very bad. Here they come out on stage. They start the music. And this is exactly, now I'm telling you, we only had sound effects, but this is exactly how it went. I'm all out of love. Good night, everybody. Lightning, thunder, and they ran off the stage as fast as they could. But that's all they got out. One half of a sentence and left. So
that's crazy.
I thought I've actually seen the shortest concert in the history of music.
There was another short one. I'll tack this on. Billy Ray Cyrus, before he became big. He, for those of you that might be out of the area, is from the Huntington area, from Flatwoods, Kentucky. But he did a Wayne County Fair, and I had never seen him. Finally got my chance to go see him and meet him, and we got to the Wayne County Fair, and I sat through 3 or 4 very iffy bands. And Billy Ray came on stage finally. They introduced him. He came on stage. He played like 3 notes, and everything went black. And the power went out at wherever we were at the Wayne County Fair. And I talked to him about it later. He referred to it as the night the lights went out in Wayne. But so that was a short one too.
Vicki
I was
Lawrence
finally going to get to meet the guy. And
okay.
But anyway.
Now that we digress a little bit,
We did.
Let's move on. How about a couple of guys that I think were a couple of your favorites because they remembered you, actually. It was Hall & Oates.
Yeah, Hall & Oates. It was funny because the record company set us up, you know, and as they always do, and they said, now, this is going to be one of those deals where you'll go back, you take a picture and you'll leave. They probably won't talk to you, you know, they're kind of that way. And we learned to accept that over the years from several people. But we got backstage in Charleston and then in Huntington, I think, was that order. I'm not sure, but we went to both shows, and my wife and I went backstage, and you couldn't have met 2 kinder guys. You know, we had pictures made. My wife wanted a picture made with Daryl. I remember him saying, "Whatever you'd like, my dear," to her, and I sat over on the side and talked to John Oates for 15, 20 minutes. We talked about race cars and stuff that I knew nothing about. But just to be talking with Hall & Oates, they were the biggest duo probably of all time, and certainly of that era. And, you know, it was funny because the late 70s, early to mid 80s, a lot of bands came in to both venues, Charleston and Huntington. I don't see that much anymore.
No.
You know, I don't see Ed Sheeran or Ariana Grande or any of these people coming to the Huntington Civic Center anymore. But back then, that's why I got to meet all of these people that sound like VH1's Where Are They Now? But Hall & Oates were great guys. Got a picture of them here at the Hall of Fame. I'm in the middle of them, and that's how I got the nickname And. It was Daryl Hall, me, John Oates in the picture. And so it was Hall and Oates, and they called me And for a while after that picture.
Now, if I remember correctly, a story you related to me years ago, that Hall and Oates played one year, then they go talk to him, met him, and all this thing went on. They leave, of course. Next year, I think it was the very next year, may have been the year after, whatever. They come back and they play a return date, and they see you and call you by name. They remembered you.
They actually did, yeah. Yeah,
that is that's commendable.
Very commendable, and you never know when an artist calls you by date if they're not prepping for some reason or whatever.
Right.
But that was very nice.
Yeah,
the greatest guys in the world. My buddy Frank, who's probably watching, says they must be your favorite group of all time. Probably not, but they're certainly the nicest people, and one of my favorite groups from that era.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, I mean, they are a favorite group.
Well, it shows good people exist all around the world in every stage and phase of life.
But it was really ironic because the guy said, now, don't be upset if you take a picture. And then some of the people we thought would be nice ended up being just take a picture and leave. So, you know.
Okay, well, we got this out of the way.
Yeah.
How about Dr. Noah Drake, otherwise known as Rick Springfield?
Yeah. Well, I met him twice. He played Huntington and he played Charleston, probably about a year apart. And it was the same at both shows. Again, not disparaging the guy, just it was one of those, you waited in line. There was a line of people, radio people, fans, however they got, maybe soap opera fans. But you waited in line. When you got to the front of the line, they'd call you over and they said, okay, here you are. Stand beside him, take a picture, and leave. So I really didn't get to know Rick at all, but or talk with him. But again, he was available and accessible, and people didn't have to do that back then.
Kind of like a mafia don.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. Jesse's Girl, Don't Talk to Strangers. Again, they wanted us.
There you go. That's the reason he didn't want to talk to strangers.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get on to our next celeb. This is it's news to me. How about a guy named Huey Lewis?
Huey Lewis, yeah. Huey was, as I recall, a very nice guy. That show was in Charleston, and we got backstage, and there's a picture of me floating around that I posted on Twitter with me and a lot of other radio guys and Huey, and nothing spectacular to tell you. He was a nice guy, and we did pictures with him, and I think we spoke a little bit. We got to talk to each other, but nothing spectacular. But yeah, it was great that I got to meet him because they were one of the big acts of that time period.
There's no truth to the rumor that when he was a small child and he went to Disneyland, they called him Baby Huey. Okay, let's move on.
I don't think so.
Okay, that's my attempt at humor. It's very, very feeble. Okay, this group was arguably one of the biggest bands, if not the biggest band of the mid '80s, or maybe the entire decade of the '80s. That would be Journey.
Yes, yeah. Got an interesting story, kind of interesting story. We saw Journey in Charleston, and they were great. One of the few times I think my wife almost fainted was when Steve Perry walked out on stage, and there he is, and Steve Perry was one of the great vocalists of all time. But we got to go backstage for that show, and it was kind of weird. I meant to bring I don't know what you'd call it. It was an album-sized, I don't know, placard or something. I don't know what you'd call it, but we handed this piece of cardboard we were given for the concert date that they were on, and we would hand it to the first member of Journey. He'd sign it, give it to the second member, and on down the line. And I got that autograph, still have it at home. Jonathan Cain was there, Neil Sean, pardon me, and even Randy Jackson. I didn't realize at the time But one of my friends saw the thing recently and said, "Hey, there's Randy Jackson's autograph." And I said, "Yeah, it is." But it was disappointing in the fact that Steve Perry was not to be seen, not to be seen. So I found out later that he did not do backstages after John Lennon was shot. He had become rather paranoid, and he didn't do what they called meet and greets, where you would meet the star and greet them, and if they allowed you, you'd talk to them. But we got everybody in Journey's autograph but Steve Perry, and my wife and I were with another couple, her cousin and her husband, and the male half of the other couple and I went to get the car. We left the girls by the Civic Center door, and went up and got the car, drove down, and my wife and her cousin get in the car, and they're all giddy. "Guess who we saw? Guess who we saw?" I said, "Who?" And she said, "Steve Perry." Steve came out the back entrance where they happened to be waiting. We went out the backstage entrance and left them there. And she said he spoke to them and seemed to be really nice on his way to his limo to go home. So
the rest of the guys had to walk.
Yeah, that was exactly. So that was an instance where I didn't get to meet the big guy, but my wife actually got to see him. And I would have been happy with that run-in. But that's sort of an interesting story.
As a side note, Neil Schon, whatever how you want to pronounce it, one of the most, how are we going to put this, unheralded, underrated, yeah, and one of the most underrated guitar players in rock and roll music. I am not kidding you, folks. This guy can flat out shred it. He's a great guitarist, and I don't think he got enough credit for it.
Probably not.
Very good guitarist.
And I need to mention that all these guys, when they were in concert, they were terrific. I mean, I never really saw a bad show. So, you know.
I once saw Bobo Brazil wrestle the Sheik.
Oh, did you really?
Yes. So that, if that's my claim to fame, then so be it. How about an 8x10 glossy, though?
That's right. There you go. Have anybody else you want to mention? I've wrote down a couple of people that I...
Go ahead. If you got anybody else,
yeah,
please.
We met Bryan Adams in Charleston. Bryan fronted somebody, probably Journey. We got pictures made with Bryan, and he was a very cordial guy. He came in with Glass Tiger. Glass Tiger fronted Bryan Adams, who fronted somebody else. And Glass Tiger, I believe, was a Canadian group that did the song "Don't Forget Me When I'm Gone." And Bryan actually did "For Heaven's Sake" at the end of the song. That's Bryan Adams singing. So
and
it was cool that they got together. Thank you. I've been working on that for a long time. I mentioned that I met Richard Marx. This was probably we're into the 90s now. Richard Marx did a show at the Huntington Civic Arena, and before it changed names, I believe. And they actually had a surprise party for me. It was my 25th year at Key. So I haven't done the math. I started in 78, 88, 98. It must have been the 2000s, I guess. Early 2000s, but they surprised me with a check and a clock with my name on it, and congratulations on your 25th anniversary. And I guess it would have been 6 years before my 31 years was up, so it would have been in the 2000s. But Richard Marx was there, and we got a lot of pictures made with him. I got a chance to meet one of the biggest icons of all time, Elton John. Played Charleston. I got off the air at 6 o'clock. Jim Davis, my program director, and his wife, and my wife they picked my wife up first. I ran out of the radio station at 6 o'clock. The meet and greet was to be around 7:15. We drive up the interstate, daggone it if we didn't hit construction. And the traffic came to a total stop, and we was at a stop for about a half an hour. We didn't get to the Civic Center in Charleston until about 7:30. Met up with a record rep who said, yeah, he's already done that. It's already been done.
Oh,
so
man.
We missed the chance to meet him. Do you have one more story? We did something in, I think, 93, 94, something like that. We did, it was Pat Paxton's invention. Pat was the program director at the time, and he called it a star party. It was our way of thanking listeners for Key. These guys came to town but didn't perform. Mickey Thomas, who was the lead singer of Starship, sang Fooled Around and Fell in Love. He was the vocalist on the Elvin Bishop Group's song Fooled Around and Fell in Love. And Mickey came in and just basically signed autographs. He didn't perform. I went out to the airport and picked him up. And again, it was funny about throwing Billy Ray Cyrus into this, but my wife went to Camden Park with her aunt. They met Billy Ray before I did. And I'm out picking up Mickey Thomas. I think it was the bigger deal at the time, but then all of a sudden Billy Ray turned the world on its ear with that song in '92, I believe. But went out and picked Mickey up. Mickey was great. Mickey, actually, we went to the hotel room and did a little imbibing with Mickey afterwards, and we were up till probably 3 or 4 in the morning with him. He stayed at the Radisson. Guy named Oz from the group Striper, who had like one song, and I think that was a Christian rock band, believe it or not. Oz came in, signed autographs. A fellow named Glenn Medeiros had a song called Nothing's Gonna Change My Love for You, one hit song, one hit wonder. He came in for the show. And Michael Damian came in. He played, he was on Young and the Restless. And in '89, I believe, was the year that he took Rock On to #1. And Michael, I believe, did a performance for that show, that Star Party. I believe he was the one guy that performed. And I'll tell this brief story. This will be it, pretty much. This is funny. We took Michael. It was Michael, his sister, the record rep, for his label, and my wife and myself. We went to what we consider one of the finest restaurants in the area, a place called Rebels and Redcoats. It was like a 5-star restaurant. It was adjacent to a bowling alley, and Dave spent a lot of time. In fact, I think Dave and I met at that bowling alley.
Probably.
And worked there. Dave worked there and was very close to people there. And Rebels and Redcoats we would take. It was kind of funny because the people would say, "Where do you take me? To a bowling alley to eat?" You know, but it ended up being this lavish. The only time I ever had calamari was at Rebels and Redcoats. But Michael was the most wonderful guy. He still talks to me on Twitter. He was on Young and the Restless, I believe, and then had that big song, Rock On. His version of the David Essex classic actually did better than the David Essex version. But he listened. We talked about our favorite TV show at the time, which was Quantum Leap. And he was like, "I haven't caught any TV lately, but I'll have to watch that." And extremely personable guy, just a great guy. We had dinner with him. One of my basic regrets is that I did not get a picture made with him. But we're leaving the restaurant. We walk out the restaurant. There's a little corridor, a little hallway or whatever between the restaurant and the parking lot. We walk out together, and these girls were walking in, and they said hi, and we said hi to them. And we got about halfway to the car, and we hear this blood-curdling scream, "Ah!" And we looked at each other, and I said, "Michael, they just realized who you were. And you're not expecting to pass Michael Damian in a restaurant in Huntington, West Virginia." But we looked around, and they're like peeking around the corner, like, "That's him, that's him, that's him." And it was him, and it was really funny to get that kind of reaction.
You know, I almost did that once. I saw Johnny Paycheck at Kroger in
Did you really?
Yeah, over in Ohio, and I just, Proctorville, and I screamed like that too. I said, "Johnny Paycheck, ah!" No, so
take this job and shut up.
Before we get off with this, my silliness here.
Sure.
Getting back to Mickey Thomas.
Yeah.
As I spoke to you on the way here, this guy, he was my favorite frontman of Starship ever. Great tenor voice, one of the great singers of all time, period, in rock and roll music. I mean, this such a clear, strong tenor voice, and I preferred him over Marty Ballin. No offense to Marty, but I preferred him over him because he could sing.
Absolutely. Well, I continue to meet people. I stressed today, but gave a list of people that we met in the late 70s to the mid 80s pretty much. I continue to meet people on a sporadic basis. Uh, did a lot of phone interviews. But the last person I met before I left Key was Hillary Duff, who came to Charleston and did a show. We had some kids with us, and they were extremely excited that Lizzie McGuire was going to be there. And I got backstage with her, got a picture made with her, and we left. And I think I went to the racetrack or something for the rest of the duration of the concert. But the late 70s, early to mid 80s, a very special time because we get to see a whole lot of great acts and people that have become iconic.
Wow, you've been very fortunate in that aspect.
That was part of the gig as music director, and not every DJ got to do it.
One of the perks of the game, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I believe that's going to wrap it up for us, folks.
It should.
We've enjoyed bringing this, and if you've enjoyed Gary's commentary here and all the people he's met, and partially my silliness, which I'm pretty good at, we hope that you will join us again. We ask that if you have any mention of any topic, anything you want to discuss, any of the questions you have, email Gary at rdwgmm
Radio Days with Gary Music Miller, abbreviated.
Absolutely. At gmail.com. You can catch him on Twitter at Gary Music Miller. You can leave your comments on the YouTube channel, is Radio Days with Gary Music Miller. There are many ways to get a hold of him, and let us know if you have an idea. If you have a suggestion, anything like that, let us know. We'll be more than happy to take it under advisement.
If I may interject, I want to thank Sean for his letter and his suggestion. I think it was an interesting one. We do use your suggestions, so we want them. That's part of the reason we're doing this whole thing, was so you could connect with us and connect with me if you listen to me or listen to Key. And I need to mention a very special thanks to our friend Tom Roten. Tom Roten's a morning guy on WVHU. He does a talk show here, and he interviewed me a couple of weeks ago and let me publicize the show, and it was great to catch up with him again. I worked with him for many years. So Tom, if you're out there, thank you for the airtime. Not exactly what you do usually. So
amen.
Yeah.
Okay, with that said, we're going to leave, and we'll come back to you in a couple of weeks or so with another fun topic, and we hope you will be right here giving us a view. So with that said,
thank you, and
we're going to get out of here.
So long.
Take care. We'll see you next time.